What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Roster Bubble Series video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops through drops. Share this out as well. I hope you guys had a great 4th of July weekend. Hope you guys are still enjoying it as much as possible. But with that being said, another Roster Bubble Series video. In these videos, I give a player that is on the roster bubble and I talk about their background, their competition, how they could make a roster spot, how they could lose a roster spot, and then finally a prediction at the end. And this one's a little different from the ones we've been doing. And he's an undrafted free agent. That's why it's different. And Jeremiah Hall is my favorite undrafted free agent. So might as well talk about him as much as possible. Obviously, I mentioned him a lot in our undrafted free agent video with Nick Filato. He provided some great insight on him. If you haven't already, please check that out. Great video. Great discussion overall. But Jeremiah Hall, in my opinion, is the most exciting undrafted free agent in this whole class of young undrafted free agents. I don't want to say that too many times. But he's also not a guaranteed to make the roster, which makes him into a roster bubble candidate, roster bubble profile. But Jeremiah Hall, as an H-back, fullback, tight end, 32 receptions, 334 yards, and 4 touchdowns in 13 games for Oklahoma. And he also had 6 carries for 25 yards and 1 touchdown with Oklahoma. And we all know Lincoln Riley is an offensive genius. Now, you take a look and you think of the fullback position, you think of it as dying, and you think of the fullback position for the Giants the last couple of years, it's not very exciting. I mean, Elijah Penny is probably the most exciting figure that's been in the fullback position for the last few years other than Henry Hynoski. But with that being said, I think Jeremiah Hall, when you look at his college tape, he does a lot more, and he was featured in the offense a lot more, maybe than Elijah Penny was at his college. Now, I didn't watch any of Elijah Penny's film, but I think Jeremiah Hall is just more of an exciting player. Now, at the NFL level, he's probably not going to be used as much as he was at Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley, but I think there's a lot of high upside there. But at the same time, if he doesn't eclipse that during training camp, or at least eclipse a little bit of it, and his ceiling and stuff like that, he's not going to make the roster. So let's go into his competition. It looks like this because, of course, H-back, so fullback, running back, and tight end. Austin Allen, Ricky Seals-Jones, Jordan Akins, Andre Miller, Chris Myrick, I almost said Myriak, but it's Myrick, Jashawn Corbin, Matt Breida, I almost said Breida, Sandro Platzgummer, Gary Brightwell, Antonio Williams. So for the tight ends, of course, goes to the blocking standpoint. Austin Allen, undrafted free agent out of Nebraska. Ricky Seals-Jones, who's not really a blocker. Neither is Jordan Akins, both veteran tight ends. Seals-Jones spent some time, I believe, in Kansas City, Washington, and Arizona. Jordan Akins spent most of his time with Andy Bischoff in Houston with the Texans. Andre Miller, who's converting to tight end, undrafted free agent out of Maine. Chris Myrick, he's been a veteran for the last 2 years-ish. He was with the Dolphins, then with the Giants a little bit last year. Jashawn Corbin, undrafted free agent, running back out of Florida State. Matt Breida, obviously, he's been in the league for a couple of years as a veteran backup running back. Sandro Platzgummer, of course, the international prospect from Austria. Gary Brightwell, 6th-round pick out of Arizona from last year, mostly special teamer. And Antonio Williams, veteran running back from Buffalo the last 2 years. So how can he win? In my opinion, he's got to show some skill as a blocking receiving threat like he did in college, show some versatility as a lead blocker, and when he gets the ball, yards after the catch is one of the bigger parts and one of the more exciting parts of his game, and one of the parts of his game I really liked at Oklahoma. And if he could show just a taste of that in the preseason, nothing too big, nothing just plain out there, but if you show a taste of that, that could earn you a roster spot because, once again, this offense, we don't know what it's going to look like. It's going to be explosive in, however Brian Dable and Mike Kafka style it, but I think it's going to include a fullback possibly. If it's not Jeremiah Hall, it could be someone else. But he's got to show some skill as a blocking threat because Daniel Bellinger is the only I would say, close to proven blocker when you come to, talk about this roster. Seals Jones, Akins, they're not blockers. Andre Miller, he's converting to tight end, so he's nowhere near that. Chris Myrick, he is not a blocker. I wouldn't even rely on him to block. And with that being said, Jeremiah Hall, he's the real fullback on the roster, and he probably is the second best blocker, if you think about it, on this roster right now in terms of the tight end room, if you want to consider him a part of that, of course. So show some skill as a blocking threat, whether it's, in the running game or maybe on third down. They feature him in the backfield a little bit, whether it's Davis Webb, Tyrod Taylor, or Daniel Jones throwing the football. If he's, in the backfield on third down and he's just a running back and he's blocking, you may not even need a guy like Matt Breida or just keeping an extra guy on the roster because of their ability to pass block on third down. So there's that, and it could save you a lot of roster space. Receiving threat, once again, we talked about yards after the catch ability, the explosive play ability with Jeremiah Hall, but receiving ability is going to be out there, and he's facing some tough competition in terms of receiving ability because Matt Breida can do that in the running back room. Guys like Ricky Seals-Jones and Jordan Akins can definitely do that. Austin Allen can do that. So if anything, he's facing more competition as a receiving threat than he is as a blocking threat. And it's going to be interesting, though, because me and Nick Filato talked about this. And Brian Dable's offense, now you talk about, the last few years with the Buffalo Bills, second least, I believe, in terms of running, which means are blocking tight ends really used? And there were times in the last few years where Dawson Knox was the only tight end that was dressed in that room. So they could have 3 tight ends on the roster, but only one could be activated on game day. So it's going to be interesting, but could they look for more of a pass-catching back overall, whether it's running back or it's tight end? So that's where you have to question, okay, is Jeremiah Hall really going to make the roster? We'll see. How can he lose? Sinks in the depth chart, loses reps when it comes to blocking, and drops passes with the 2s and 3s. Doesn't really show any yards after the catch or explosive ability in the passing game. Dropping passes would be the worst. And the way I think he wins a roster spot, and obviously we talked about this, and if he doesn't block well, he's not making the roster. Maybe he goes to practice squad. But with that being said, one of the main X factors for Jeremiah Hall making this roster, in my opinion, is blocking. Once again, we mentioned it already. Daniel Bellinger and him are probably the 2 best blockers in terms of, tight ends on this roster. Austin Allen, not all there yet. Seals-Jones, Akins, we already talked about that. Andre Miller and Myrick, we already talked about that. But I think a lot of it's going to come from him as a blocker. And once again, we just talked about his receiving ability and the way Brian Dable used to dress just one tight end. So he may not look for an all-around blocking fullback / tight end / running back, which is essentially an H-back. But he just has to play his cards correctly. When he gets receiving reps, catch passes, just in case they try to say, okay, listen, we're not going to need too many blocking tight ends. So let's just say they keep Ricky Seals-Jones and they keep a guy like Daniel Bellinger. Who's going to be that next guy? Are they really going to keep another tight end? Or are they just going to say, okay, well, Jeremiah Hall can do both, so let's keep him. But in the blocking game, if for some reason they want to utilize the running game or just overall blocking more than they did in Buffalo over the last few years, he has to be proficient in that area too. Now, once again, it's a very tough jump. It's a big jump at that. But when you have Daniel Bellinger as really, once again, for the 90th time in this video, the only sufficient blocker in the tight end room, it gets pretty dicey. And a lot of other guys on this roster will try to be those blocking tight ends and try to compete for that, but they won't succeed. Guys like Akins, guys like Seals-Jones, where Jeremiah Hall, he has that upside. Anyway, prediction, 53-man roster. I think he's going to make the roster. I think his receiving ability and the way they used him at Oklahoma, I think that gets him onto the roster. Now, will they use him like at Oklahoma? No. But I see him as a guy like Reggie Gilliam, maybe even Pat DeMarco and Anthony Sherman, some fullbacks that were with the Chiefs, and obviously the Buffalo Bills over the last few years. Those are some notable names. But Jeremiah Hall definitely starts the season on special teams, in my opinion, and then he works his way into the receiving game and also just as a featured tight end when it comes to blocking for Saquon Barkley. But they're not going to do what the Giants did last year, feature all three tight ends, and basically give it away to the defense that they are running the football. But please like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you know when the live stream pops through your jobs. Appreciate y'all coming back. Be sure to share this out as well. Peace out, guys. See you later, and stay cool.